Hi Dino, you'll be running a masterclass on SecureS and event sourcing. Could you describe what they are all about?
Well, as I say things, SecureS is today the most effective pattern for building nearly any sort of applications. SecureS is about using neatly separated stacks for commands and queries. In the end, it's just like having two simpler domain models instead of just one that takes care of both aspects, reading and writing, thus amplifying complexity. The query stack of a SecureS solution is extremely simple, and usually it consists of only a plain query layer on top of typically Link or ADO.NET. The command stack instead is typically, but not necessarily, expressing the business logic in terms of tasks and implements them through commands, events, and their synchronization. Then, like icing on cake, event sourcing is about storing events, and it is about using events as the primary data source of the application. So you have no relational model to persist. You just have events logged to form the entire history of the system. You replay events to build and rebuild the state of entity objects on demand. When it comes to the actual implementation, there are quite a few extra details to be figured out, but that is just what you'll find out in the class.
For what kind of problems would you recommend SecureS and when you would better use traditional CRUD?
Honestly, I don't think there are significant downsides to using SecureS. SecureS is a pattern that suggests you have two distinct layers, one filled with a model and services necessary for reading, and one with a model and services for commands. What a model is, whether an object model, a library of functions, or maybe a collection of data transfer objects, ultimately is an implementation detail. With this definition in place, nearly any system can benefit from SecureS, and coding it doesn't require doing things in a way that is significantly different, at least, than in the past. Neither does it mean learning new and scary things. So in summary, I'd say that SecureS in a way is just a better and more scalable way of just doing CRUD.
For a few years, DDD was pushed out as the definitive solution for complex business scenarios. What's the relationship between DDD and SecureS?
Well, SecureS can be seen as an evolutionary step from domain-driven design, or DDD for short. DDD originally pushed the idea of a whole, all-encompassing model capable of supporting all aspects and processes of a given domain. For over a decade, however, people struggled to build systems according to DDD guidelines. Some projects that enthusiastically embraced DDD eventually worked, but other projects failed. Success stories can be told, but many people still believe that domain-driven design is hard to do, even though it can possibly deliver significant benefits. The point, as I say things, is that for many people, the perception that DDD brings benefits is much less concrete than the perception of the damage that might result from doing DDD and failing. In this context, SecureS just breaks things up. One all-encompassing model is often too complex and kind of scary. And what do you do instead in any application in the end? All you do is executing UI commands and query for data. So let's then have two distinct layers for that. And in fact, SecureS just means common and query responsibility segregation.
You are the author of many popular books on software engineering. Your latest book on software architecture just hit bookshelves. What message do you want to communicate to your readers?
Oh, as developers, we know very well Murphy laws, and in particular we know very well Murphy laws about software. My favorite one says nothing ever gets built on schedule or within budget. And there is not much you can do about this except getting to learn and to know as much as possible about the business domain that your software is all about, that your software is called to mimic. Because in the end, we ultimately write software to reproduce processes that happen, take place in the real world. We must know them. We must fully understand the mechanics of the domain, of the business domain. We must know the language being spoken by experts, and we need all of this to make sense of user requirements and plan and design software successfully.
What is the target audience of your masterclass? Is it more beneficial to junior or senior developers?
At first, I'd say that software architects and lead developers are the ideal target of this class. But then, I'd even say that nothing in this class is completely new, in the sense that most architects may have heard about most of the topics I cover in the class. So in the end, I'd rather say that any developers of any type of .NET applications may find this class beneficial. Everyone who wants to be an architect may find this class helpful. Junior and senior developers won't probably earn the same benefits from the class, but both, I think, will definitely gain a lot. To reinforce this point, let me share an anecdote. It was my very first talk in English. It was Take at Europe 1999. I was excited like crazy, and I was scared at the same time. I was hoping to find the room empty. But when I walked into the room, I found that Don Box, the god of Windows and COM developers at the time, had already captured a front row seat. He was waiting for me. So he stood up and said, "I'm here to learn from you." And then I said, "Don, but you're like God. What do you expect to learn from me?" And then he said a sentence that periodically since then resounds in my mind. "Dino," he said, "it's all about perspective." So I'm sure that everybody attending the class will gain his own unique, personal and valuable perspective of the content, whether he is a junior or senior developer.
Thank you, Dino.